What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube video. I am back. It's early in the fucking morning. It's like 6 a.m. But we're back. And well, it's probably not 6 a.m. for you, but it's like wherever you're located. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We're back with another video. Today's video is titled Scary Crime Story Events Gives Chills on TikTok. That's a long, I'm not going to. But you already know what to do. If you like. If you want to comment, you can comment. If you want to share, you should share. And we'll get right to this. Let's go.
Psychics helped solve crimes. On May 15th, 1976, 14-year-old Susan Jacobson left her home to go to a job interview at an ice cream parlor, but she never came back. Susan's parents contacted the police, but the police said she probably just ran away with her boyfriend Dempsey Hawkins, and they refused to search for her. 2 weeks later, Susan's parents contacted a psychic, Dorothy Allison, to help with the case. Dorothy asked what the word Mar meant, claiming she saw it in red spray paint. She also envisioned an abandoned car, dual church steeples, the smell of oil, and claimed that Susan had been strangled to death by her boyfriend. Then 2 years later, 3 boys stumbled across Susan's body as they were hunting. At the site was the word Mar, spray painted in red on a rock, dual church steeples, an abandoned car, and 2 oil drums which contained Susan's body. Plus, evidence at the scene showed that Susan had been strangled by her boyfriend Dempsey Hawkins, who was then sentenced to 22 years to life in prison.
Serial killer facts that will haunt your nightmares. Part 4. Researchers used AI deepfake technology to compile the faces of every serial killer into one man. Dude looks like a psychopath. If you look anything like that, you're probably a serial killer. Serial killer Ed Kemper was friends with the police officers who were investigating his murders. They all hung out at a bar together called the Jury Room. His nickname was Big Ed, and when he confessed to them, they thought it was a joke. Jeffrey Dahmer once made a drink laced with sleeping pills for a guest, but accidentally drank it himself. He later woke up to find that his soon-to-be victim had robbed him while he was sleeping. In 1906, a Moroccan murderer was sentenced to be walled up alive after he was found guilty of killing 36 women. His cries for help were heard for 2 days straight before he went silent.
Hey y'all, let's talk about the dead woman who solved her own murder. This right here is Teresita Basa. She came to America from the Philippines in the 1960s. She wanted a better life for herself in America. She moved to Chicago. She began studying music at first, and then she eventually became a respiratory therapist.
Why y'all all so depressed?
Things were going good for Teresita. Her life was cut short by a killer. On February 21st, 1977, the fire department was called to Teresita's apartment because of the smell of smoke. That's when they made the awful discovery. Teresita was found deceased and nude and found under her mattress with a knife in her chest. For months, the police were looking for Teresita's killer. 6 months after her murder, an unlikely witness came forward. Dr. Chua, who worked with Teresita, came forward to the police and said that his wife was having visions of Teresita. One day when his wife was in a trance, she told him that she was Teresita Basa and that she knew who murdered her. So when he asked her who murdered you, she said Alan Showery. Alan Showery also worked with Teresita. When the police gathered all this information, they confronted Alan with this. At first, Alan denied any involvement in Teresita's murder, but later he confessed. Now this is the thing, Alan was served 14 years in prison, but he was let out on parole in 1983.
Of course he was.
Yes, I must admit, it is scary that her ghost revealed who her killer was. But at the same time, it's sad that she didn't get the justice that she deserved. Alright y'all, I'll be back to do more true crime videos for you guys.
As you should. What am I looking at?
Never ring on this guy's doorbell. In the small town of Midnight Falls, Michigan, there lived an old man named Jebediah Jenkins. His creepy house would send shivers down anyone's spine. One fateful night, a group of adventurous friends decided to play a prank on him. They dared Luke, a brave soul, to ding-dong ditch the old man's house. The first attempt was successful. The old man emerged, yelling and searching for the culprits. Emboldened by their triumph, the group dared Luke to do it again. Little did they know, Their innocent game was about to take a terrifying turn.
Don't say he shot him.
As Luke pressed the doorbell for the second time, the front door swung open ominously. Before anyone could react, the old man's bony hand shot out, snatching Luke and slamming the door shut. Panic consumed the remaining friends as they fled in their car, desperately trying to contact Luke but receiving no response. Realizing something was terribly wrong, the friends returned the next morning and called the police. The officers arrived at the Erie house, but no one answered the door. Concerned, they decided to investigate further. Inside, they discovered a scene straight out of a nightmare.
He murdered his great-grandmother for $133. In 2012,
I heard
13-year-old
about him.
Antonio Barbo and his best friend Nathan Papp both murdered his great-grandmother in the
heard about
most
him.
horrific way. On that day, Antonio's mother drove the kids to her grandmother's house, 78-year-old Barbara Olson, but she had
Poor
no
Barbara.
idea what they were about to do. The two teens tried to sneak into Barbara's house, but then she heard them, so she invited them inside. Once Barbara turned around, her great-grandson hit her with a hatchet. Barbara was hit 27 times and had wounds all over her hands and arms, indicating that she tried to defend herself. The teens stole Barbara's jewelry along with $155 and then used that money to buy drugs and pizza. They tried to drag Barbara's body into her car, but when they couldn't pick her up, they just left her in the garage. Barbara's body was found 2 days later by her own daughter, and the boys were arrested not long after. Nathan argues that he thought Antonio was just joking about murdering his own great-grandmother, and he only participated because he was afraid that Antonio would turn on him.
He would,
Antonio's
of course.
grandmother, who's also the victim's daughter, spoke out and said that her mother was not a vindictive person and she would have wanted Antonio to have another chance at life. And Antonio's defense really tried to argue that he had a brain injury back in 2009 and that's the reason he did what he did. But none of that mattered because both of these teenagers were sentenced to life in prison and are eligible for parole in 2048. At Rite Aid, we
2048. Goddamn. You got a couple years, babes. You got a couple years.
In the moonlight, my honey, I know is a dog.
Just because I'm mean, here's that photo once again. Hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. This is the unknown man known as
We
Mr.
love that.
Cruel.
Under 1
During
minute.
the late 1980s and early 1990s, he apparently had committed several CAs and allegedly unalived 13-year-old Carmen Chan. Police have described Mr. Cruel to be a very intelligent man, as he has strategically planned each of his attacks to ensure that he would not get caught. Each time he kidnapped somebody, he would be very non-rushed and would speak with a soft voice. He even told a 14-year-old girl, quote, "My liberty, my freedom is more important than your life." I hate to say it, but it does appear he is still a free man and living in Australia. However, his last crime was committed on April 13th, 1991. Hopefully this man will be caught.
Recording, the story is extremely violent, so if you cannot handle that, please click off. I'm going to be telling you the story of Junko Furuta. Junko Furuta was a beautiful Japanese teenager who was pretty much the ideal girl. One day, the school bully admitted that he had feelings for her and she ended up rejecting him. He did not like that. On November 25th, 1988, him and 3 of his friends kidnapped Junko and held her captive in one of the boys' parents' house. Every time the parents came over, she had to pretend that she was dating the boy in fear of her life. But that wasn't it. For 44 days of a kidnapping, she had to handle the worst. She was by multiple men, over 100. She was
Goddamn.
beaten. Because they didn't feed her so much, she had to rely on eating cockroaches and drinking her own urine. Her eyelids were burnt. She was also thrown in a freezer for a couple of hours. Now at this point, she was practically begging the kidnappers to kill her, but they wouldn't. She even tried to escape once, and when they caught her, they burnt her hands and feet. One day, they challenged her to a game of cards, and when she ended up winning, they did not like that. They began to beat her and torture her to the point where her body went into shock and she passed away. To hide the evidence, they stuffed her body in a 55-gallon drum-filled concrete and disposed of it. They were caught and imprisoned, but then because they were underage at the time, 18, 17, and 16, they were charged as juveniles, and they are all now out of jail. It's disgusting.
He was holding his phone tight as hell.
Of Diogo Alves, who was known as one of Portugal's most notorious serial killers. Alves started his life of crime after he would sneak into random farmers' homes and wait for them to arrive, and when they did, he would sneak attack them, murder them, and then throw their bodies over a nearby cliff. Alves was said to have committed around 70 murders, and after he was sentenced to death by hanging, scientists decapitated him and took his head to study the thought process of a serial killer. Not only did Alves murder 70 people that he didn't know, he also murdered his entire family, and still to this day, no one knows what triggered him to commit these horrific murders. And if you're still here, you probably want to know where you can visit it, and it is in Lisbon's Faculty of Medicine, so if you're ever in Lisbon, give the head a visit.
This woman created such disturbing videos that she was sentenced to 50 years in prison. This story is truly one of the worst things that I've ever covered here on TikTok, so if you have a weak stomach or you can't hear about animal cruelty, please keep scrolling. So this is Ashley Richards from Houston, Texas. In 2015, she pleaded guilty to 4 counts of producing and 1 count of distributing these disturbing videos. And once again, I'm going to warn you, you can keep scrolling at any time before we get into these details. So this all started in 2012 when PETA, or the group known as People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, contacted the Houston police about a video they had found online. This film was titled Ebony Kill Cat, and it depicted extremely sadistic and cruel acts being forced upon a kitten. So the police got into contact with the people from PETA, and they then sent them 20 additional videos.
Goddamn.
These videos depicted the sadistic torture of various animals, including kittens, a fish, pigeon, crayfish, mice, a rabbit, all being tortured with different things like high heels, knives, screwdrivers, and pliers. In the videos, the woman that appeared in them was wearing a Mardi Gras style mask, and she would talk suggestively to the people watching this torture. Yes, that meant that there were paying customers out there that were paying this woman to produce these absolutely horrific videos. I cannot share the details of some of these videos. You can actually find the information online through news articles, but I mean, I think I changed as a person after reading these articles.
She was getting paid to torture and kill animals. I'm gonna let that sink in. People were paying her to find animals on the street, most likely, to torture them with high heels, screwdrivers, pliers, and knives. I think we're gonna end on that note because the crazy human being that's paying for that should also be arrested. Anyways, if you like this video, you know what to do. This was a very dark ass video, especially the last one, because like, why? But yes, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm gonna talk to you in the next one. We out.